Just want to say good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this month's Launch Awesome AMA. I'm Steve, and I run the Launch Awesome community. Our guest today is Graham Reed, who is the head of product ops at Cobalt.io. Today me and Graham are going to be talking about Graham's experience standing up product ops at his last two jobs. We'll kind of open it up for questions. If it's your first time joining us, so these AMAs, they're put on by the Launch Awesome community. Launch Awesome is a Slack community for product folks. So PMs, PMMs, product ops people, just to talk about the strategies, tactics, pro tips that we all use to build and launch great products and build great product teams as well. I feel like startup community stuff in general kind of fell off with the pandemic and then never really came back, even as, most of life kind of got back to normal. And this community is kind of a way to, help you get your fix of startup and product stuff if you work in product at startups. So we got about 600 product leaders and product kind of managers, marketers, ops people in there now. If you want to join, Blake's going to drop a link in the chat and you can apply to join there. If you have questions throughout, you can hit H, raise your hand. There's a Q&A widget. We can kind of tackle them at the end. We'll just kind of figure it out as we go. And with that, let's get into it. Graham, welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, totally. Just to kind of set the stage, I always like to have people give me the 2-minute highlight reel of your career, just so people kind of know where you're coming from.
Yeah, sure. So, in that 2 minutes, I've been in product for about 12, 13 years now. So started off as an entry-level product manager, didn't really know what I was doing, learning it all on the job, worked my way up, gained more experience to be a lead product manager, head of product management at a couple of different companies. And then about 2.5 years ago, really started to understand a lot more and getting a lot more to how products manage and how product management actually works in terms of the nuts and bolts of it, and really trying to focus on improving that. So I've done a lot of product management, built fantastic products. Now I'm a lot more interested in how do we do this as an art form? How do we do this as a discipline? And as we start to get into it, my last company, we formed a product operations team, and we didn't actually know it was product operations at that point. It was only as I started Googling and found out, oh yeah, actually what we're doing is this, and actually the name that we came up with fitted quite well, and kind of really have gone on from there, and just super focused on that as a function. How do we do product management rather than the building of those products and selling of them and everything else like that? So yeah, that's me.
Yes, cool. Yeah, that's funny. I feel like the stuff in product ops, it's not I feel like it's making explicit a lot of practices that have been around in kind of product management forever, giving a title to it, giving a name to it. So yeah, I love that. Love how you're kind of thinking about that. Okay, let's kind of start with your first bout of doing product ops stuff. Was at your previous company, I believe, LearnLight. Talk to us a little bit about the situation there. You were actually the head of product there, and you moved over to product ops. What was kind of going on with the company that you thought like, hey, this is a move that makes sense for us and the company as a whole?
Yeah, absolutely. So I joined LearnLight through going through kind of a period of a lot of transition. They didn't have a head of product management for quite a while. So I came in really to kind of shake things up. I had a lot of people on the team that were very passionate product managers, but we're also quite junior. Many of them had kind of only worked at that company. A lot of them have been kind of former trainers. Just to be clear, LearnLight's main asset was language training and learning. So a lot of them have been trainers for language learning and moved into an engineering or product management type role. So the formality of doing product management, really wasn't there. A lot of these people were kind of making things up as they go along, like most of us do when we first enter the discipline. So firstly, I was brought on board to kind of just lead product management, get the function of product management kind of back up and running in terms of the products and projects we were working on. And the more we went through this, there was a real need to kind of go back to basics, really kind of formalize actually what LearnLight, product management at LearnLight was all about. like everything, it's different for every business. Everybody has its own tweaks. And the thing that LearnLight really had missed out on was kind of formalizing actually what it meant for that company and business. About the same sort of time, the company was kind of really thinking, about how it wanted to do product management and its interaction with the rest of the business. Because the primary asset of what we sold at LearnLight wasn't the software at all. It was actually the language courses and things like that. The software was just a byproduct, of that, something that the customers used and interacted with. And so what happened is we actually decided to split the product function up into the different areas of the business. Some looking at training, some looking at the internal operations, some looking at customer focused things. And so actually the product managers were integrated into those teams to work specifically on their products. And then what we formed was what we then called a product operations team to actually look at how do those people work? How do they interact with the rest of the business? What are the what's the data and metrics that they are going to be most useful to them, and really start to just bring everything back to basics and say, right, how is it we should be doing product management and using all of these core skills? And it's interesting for something you said earlier, which really resonated right at that time as well, which was years ago, before product operations was a thing. Product managers did all of this themselves. I've been a product manager of one, looking after 3 or 4 different products, very different products all at the same time. And we just did all of this. We cobbled through. As product management over probably the last 10 years has become such a much more important role, a much better recognized importance of the role in many businesses. We've really started to hone in on actually, look, we need to get back to basics for product management as well. We need to let the product managers manage the products, not be so focused on how do they do it? How do they improve the way that they're doing? How do they get access to all of these weird and wonderful tools that make their lives so much better? They can access them and we can enable the access to them. But previously it was all about, well, you need to actually go and do that. You need to go and make the process. You need to go and invest in the technology, and then also do your day job as well. And so here's product operations has really then started to, as among many other things, started to now fill that gap of enabling all of that. And that's exactly what we were looking for at LearnLight.
Yeah. Did you find that anything was breaking down in particular at LearnLight, or maybe even kind of like more broadly? Like, what are the first kinds of things that generally break down at companies as they start to grow? Communication gets harder, coordination of processes get harder. Like, what was happening at LearnLight that it felt like, okay, now's the time we really need to rethink how we're working because stuff is falling through the cracks?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've mentioned the top ones there: communication between product and the rest of the business, and really, with product being that front-facing part of the technical side of the business as well. The whole tech side of the business was had lost a bit of confidence, from the rest of the business. Their confidence, the trust in what the team was working on, what it was producing. It's fair to say, that LearnLight was undergoing a big technical transformation as well at the time. So they had a very established technical product, but it was really aging. They were very late on producing and building and releasing a brand new version of the software that was consuming everybody's time and attention. So as a consequence to that, to allow the business to keep running, there was a huge demand to keep improving that system as well as build this new one. And there was just not enough time and resource to do all of that together. So as a consequence, that communication had really broken down with the rest of the business. It had become an incredibly sales-led business as well. So it was going after every opportunity rather than letting the great product and service that we had sing for itself. And ultimately, that communication just wasn't, there and in place. We didn't know what we were, going after. We didn't know any of the metrics behind what we were doing. We didn't know whether we were succeeding or failing in what we were producing. We didn't know, we didn't have a real kind of North Star of what we were trying to produce, other than just keep building what people ask you to, to build and produce, and being able for us to win customers. So, there was a lot there to kind of unpick. But, at Headlines, it really was down to, that communication, that coordination. Unlike a little bit where I am now at Cobalt, actually at LearnLight, we were quite a close-knit product team, technical team. We were all following largely the same, agile principles. We were all doing, our product management in roughly the kind of the same way across the kind of the different teams. It was really that lack of transparency, that lack of understanding from the rest of the business, or to the rest of the business, that was really missing. And that was an area that we really had to focus on quite quickly, through, just for a lot more communication, for a lot more honesty, on the stand-ups, a lot of working with those middle level managers, which I think is quite often a piece that's overlooked. We talk a lot in product operations around, making sure that we communicate, that we open, that communication is really good there. But what's often overlooked is who are we communicating to, and with what information. In some respects, there's not a huge amount of point in really going to town, in the terms of the detail, to senior leadership team. They want the highlights, but they're not the ones that are going to action anything that needs to happen. They are not necessarily always the best people to cascade that information down to their teams, which absolutely we did find at LearnLight quite heavily. It was looking to work with those people that had the most impact of what we were doing, what we were building, what we were releasing, what were the things they needed to be aware of, what were our release dates, what were our release plans, what support did we need from the rest of the business to help make these launches successful. And it was really working a lot with that middle management layer that was the catalyst for a lot of our improvements and changes as well.
Interesting. Okay. A couple follow-ups on that. You'd mentioned the business had kind of lost confidence in the product team. There was a breakdown of some communication, and maybe it's all these, but were they mostly about like the rest of the business not knowing what's shipping, not confident they're shipping the right things, not knowing after the fact if those things have been like successful in producing the outputs that they were intended to produce? Or talk to me about that.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. The elements of all of the above. I think the biggest thing really was that there was a plan from upon high to really double down and focus on the new product that we've been working on for so long. That wasn't necessarily being cascaded down. So it's not necessarily a piece that there was complete discommunication between the rest of the business and the technical side of the business. It wasn't them and us. There was breakdowns largely across the board. There was a desire from on high to have that pushed forward, but at the same time, those people on the ground particularly in the operations and sales departments were still saying, well, this is all lovely and great, but until we've got that, we need to keep selling this product. We need to keep having a product that is working, that is sellable, that is attractive compared to our quickly coming up competitors as well. So there was that breakdown. There was that misalignment between actually what the product is doing and what the company wanted the product team to do. We were taking our orders and we were delivering, but actually what was also missing was that storytelling as well, to say, look, here's the story of what we're doing. We are, doubling down on this. These are all the advantages we have. This is going to bring us. So how do we do this? And alongside that as well was a lack of collaboration. And what I mean by that, there was a lack of collaboration between all of those, those teams, those leads across the whole business to pull together, on the situation that we are in. It was not a great situation. We were where we were, and we were so far down a path that we just had to keep moving forward with it to get to the end of where we needed to be. The company was still in a great position, still earning well, still top of the market of where it was. We just needed to kind of get through this position that we'd found ourselves in. And what was also missing was that look, let's all pull together on this. How do we work? We don't have a choice. We have to keep down this road. We'll keep maintaining what we've got to a certain extent, but how do we how do we tell this story together? How do we make this story together? And how do we
Yep.
all align to it, rather than, you know, the product team coming out with a story and everybody else complaining about it, or not aligning to it, or just constantly coming back to us and saying, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? I need this. This customer's going to leave if we don't have this, that, and the other, which I'm sure everybody in the product space, you know, knows very,
Yes.
very well.
Yep. Okay. So love that. That's great. Talk to me about some like specific, I don't know, specific programs or specific communication rituals or planning processes or communication processes, et cetera, that you guys tried, that you implemented, and what were the like effects of doing that?
So one of the first things that we spent a little bit of time on was producing what I called Product Hub. So this was it was built in Confluence. It was a set of pages that pulled together the important information. So we're talking product updates, project and OKR updates. You know, where are we on the project timeline and things like that. Put it all together in a space that is easily accessible. So this is nothing new per se. You know, all teams, all companies have these have all these documentation spaces. Of course they do, but they're ridiculously large. They're quite often very unorganized. They've been built and built upon for years. So what we really needed was, look, this is your one-stop shop to go and get everything that you need right now, that you need every day or every week, that actually you're going to refer to quickly, and that key information, that key elevator pitch type information, alongside our analytics that we were now starting to make much more public within the business, as well as what's some of our self-service forms and things like that we can start to implement and produce. Alongside, you know, with all of this noise, all of this communication about kind of where is it, and we want all of this and things like that. You know, there was a lot of communication that was also then being lost in all of that. Some of these really great feature ideas, some of these things that we could really hit really quickly, and that noise was just drowning out all of the things that we could actually kind of do. So at LearnLike, we were using Teams, and just chat after chat, channel after channel was just, you know, endless, you know, mix match of requests and ideas and things like that. So alongside all of this, we started to, you know, put various different channels in place, channels of communication, using forms that put things directly into our Jira projects, or our ClickUp projects, as we were starting to experiment with as well, to start to formalize this, to audit this, to allow this information to be collected, and as well to formalize that collection process. So one of my biggest bugbears when I was a product manager as well was absolutely you get all these ideas, whether it be on an email or Teams or back in the day Skype and things like that, and they'd be like, wouldn't it be great if we had this? Yeah, it would. But where's the value? Where's the value to the customer? Where's the value to us? How many customers are asking for this? What's the impact? How confident are you? You know, all these same sort of questions that actually the product teams will always be asking themselves, all these sorts of frameworks of questions and things like that. The best people to answer these questions is the people that are asking them. And quite often the sales teams, customer service teams, people like that. Because not only should they know that information, if they're going to be suggesting it, it puts them an amount of responsibility on them as well to be making these things. Gone should be the days of throwing these requests over the fence and, right, it's now a product's problem. I've made the suggestion, now you go and build it and you find out all the information. No. We all work here together. We should all be working on the same team, well, on the same lines, pulling in the same direction. So you have to be making suggestions that make sense for the business, not just because a customer has asked and you don't want to say no, not just because this customer is threatening to leave us and you're going to go and do everything possible to try and keep them. We need to assess this properly in a formalized way. And so the great thing about these forms that we've put onto as part of this very quick access product pieces about incoming communication as well, to say, okay, what is it you want? Now justify it to us. If you can justify it, fantastic. You know, it goes onto our backlogs. We will do all the usual product management things with it, but you can't just go, put these things to us. And this might sound quite, adversarial a little bit, like quite confrontational, but I think that product teams really do need to, push back. They do have this responsibility on the products to make sure that they are successful. If they're building things that are not going to add value just because the salesperson has asked for it, then they're not doing their job right. So how can we make sure that they are doing their job right with a million other things that they are trying to do? How can we automate some of this? How can we push some of these questions, some of these roles and responsibilities out to the rest of the business? And this is one way to achieve that. And we found tremendous amount of uptake in Product Hub, in the usage of these new processes that we were putting in place. People saw the value, and importantly, because these requests, these suggestions, these things like that were being responded to, were being listened to, there was interaction with them, which really wasn't happening too well before. The trust started to come back just by communicating and by collaborating, by opening up, the direction of the product, by opening up these suggestions and saying, well, what do you think about what we should do next? The trust was starting to come back to what the product team was doing, because people had an amount of shared ownership, and they saw that these people, and quite often forgetting that they were people themselves, were actually there doing a good job, and ultimately listening to what they were saying.
Yes. Yeah. Love that. God, in startups, there's so many opportunities. I feel like startups maybe die more from bloat, from just building every request that comes in, than from having too much focus. So yeah, I love that. Okay. We covered a lot there. And I think that's kind of like the gold of this talk. It's like, what are the specific programs implemented there? So, okay, I want to kind of list these out. Okay. So first one was around just kind of formalizing this collection, this like customer feedback collection process. Tell me like a little bit more about that. Part of that you had mentioned having folks almost kind of like enrich this feedback with more context around like, who these people are, like why does this make sense strategically? Like what are the right questions that you want to have sales? Yes. What is the right context that you want sales and support to be adding to feature requests such that it can be used effectively?
Yeah. Great question. So, we need basic, information about this, who has requested this, and forgive me to everyone on the call, we're all being product professionals, teaching you to suck eggs, but, these things are quite often overlooked. Who is requesting this? What's the value behind this? In monetary terms, very, very simple pieces of information. How many customers have asked, for this? We will get so much requested to us that we have to start prioritizing and even validating this, from using very, very simple metrics. Before we even get there, when we start to look at the information that gets supplied to us, what we should be doing is we should be validating this very simply to say, is this sensible? Is this reasonable for us to do? And do we have a hope in hell's chance of actually achieving this within the next 12 months? If you're not going to achieve it in the next 12 months, there's no point even kind of keeping it on your board. Maybe archive it away somewhere, because things are going to change so much in that period of time. And 12 months, and many people will say 12 months is even too long. I think 12 months is sensible if you're considering this as an idea, something that, we'll refer back to. And we need to keep referring back to these items as well. Certainly where I am at Cobalt now, we have a great hygiene process in terms of looking at these items and then coming back to them. We have a process whereby an idea is very quickly accepted or rejected based upon those 3 criteria. And then it sits in an ideas board. And every 3 months, the ideas board holistically is then reviewed to say, right, here's all the things that we accepted previously. I'm now going to go through them and essentially compare them and just say, well, that idea over there, still love it. Really great thing that we're going to come back to probably in 6 hours. That idea there, we love it. But you know what? There's so many other great ideas on here that we could fill 2 backlogs with. I'm just going to bin this one off. We're going to reject this one after the fact, because actually now we're keeping good things live for us to go back to build our roadmaps and our strategy from. And if they're just not realistically ever going to get done, it's not a palatable thing to think about, but it's just the truth. We have to bin them off. So coming back to what are those questions we want to ask? So we've got those basic logistics things. Then we really do need to start diving into where's the value? Okay. Now, value is a great question because, and I was at a product operations festival online yesterday, we was talking a lot about this. Value for the company is a fairly easy thing to do. And sorry, I should say that I term value as two things. It's value to the customer and value to the company. Value to the company or business is a fairly easy thing. It's money, it's more users, more subscriptions, or retention. Largely can be filled into those sort of things. And of course, you've got kind of happiness and NPS scores and things like that go with it. Value to the customer is sometimes quite a much more difficult thing to do. And depending on your business, your individual business, what it is you sell, that value can be different. It doesn't actually matter what you define value is, as long as it's something that you can compare like for like. So if you determine value for your business and your Netflix, the value to you is subscriptions, ultimately. How many people are subscribing? How many repeat people are coming back time and time again? That's not the same as Amazon, because they're looking for how many people are purchasing on their platform. So it's still money, but actually what is the value to the individual customer? As long as you can compare like for like, that's how you then can start to prioritize and determine what it is that you should and shouldn't be doing. So we need to drill into what is the value of this feature to the customer. What is it going to do for them? Is it going to save them time? Is it going to save them money? Is it going to improve their efficiency? Is it going to improve their own sales of their own products, depending on what it is that you're providing? Who's going to know that? Yes, arguably, you as the product teams are doing your research into your preferred market, and that only really works on, if you've got a quite a defined, well-defined or niche market. If you're quite a multi-ranged company that works with lots of different business sectors, it can be quite difficult to kind of define that. So you need to understand what that value is to that individual person. And the best person to do it is going to be the people that are talking to those customers themselves, those ones that want those features. So there will be sales teams, there will be customer support teams, arguably a little bit of marketing as well, maybe. They're the best people. They're talking to the customers already. So get them to be talking to them and defining that value. Get them to be doing that as part of the submission process. Don't waste people's time on either side by not gathering that. And it puts that emphasis back on those people as well. And so really talking about kind of, putting the emphasis on the sales teams to be finding this sort of information out, because they can have a shared responsibility in that. One thing I really drill into the companies I work with is, look, we're all in this together. You need to think about what you're submitting. You need to take responsibility to say, look, if I'm going to submit this, I really believe that this is something that we should do. Again, none of this chucking it over the fence and just, well, I'll submit everything that somebody asks me. If you were in charge, salesperson, whoever it's going to be, what would you choose to do? What would you choose to do next? What are you going to weigh up? Product teams, technical teams have a finite amount of resource to be able to build anything. So I'm quite happy for you to help prioritize these things. But you have to, be making sure that you're submitting things that you genuinely believe are going to add benefit to this company and to the customers. And if it's not, you need to consider whether you should even be submitting this. You need to be, taking that responsibility as much as anybody. So that's the importance then of coming right back to where we started with this, is having these really well-defined processes, these really well-defined forms, surveys, questions that people need to answer to supply product teams with the right information, and to ensure that's quite well enforced across the business. And that's absolutely in the domain of product operations.
Yes. Yeah, love that. I think there's a lot of good intention from sales and from support when they're submitting requests. I think they just kind of haven't often been in the PM seat, and they don't know that, hey, it's great that you want to help and you're kind of chucking stuff over the wall, but like we have so many options to consider. Like we need this extra info, this extra context about this request if we're going to make good use of it. Yeah, totally. Okay, parts of the to go way back a little bit. Okay, one of the things that you'd started talking about when you were starting to talk about the product hub thing that you had built was around this idea that, hey, companies have been doing this for kind of ever. Most companies have kind of had this place somewhere in their internal docs or wherever that they're trying to centralize a lot of this stuff around what they're doing. And it tends to just not get well used. And I think a lot of it is that it's as much, maybe more of a people problem than a tooling problem sometimes. If that makes sense. It's like a people and practices problem. Curious if you have any kind of like specific tips on like levels of fidelity, proper cadences to communicate this, like the right kinds. Do you get kind of where I'm going with this question?
Yeah.
It's like, how do we communicate in a way that people are actually going to take the time to read it?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is actually a superb question across the board anyway, because moving now into kind of, I've done a lot more of this at Cobalt where I am now, because communication is such an important part. It's what I've always believed as to be the number one most important quality, good quality for product managers, product operations, anybody. Product operations have to be great storytellers. They have to listen, they have to talk about what they're building, they have to inspire, they have to have a passion. Even if they don't believe it, they have to exude a passion for what they are looking to do and believe. Because if they don't, then who else is going to? Who else is going to make get people excited about this latest thing that we have just built? But hand in hand with that is who is listening to their communication. You could be the most passionate person in the world, but if the other side of it is just not getting what you're talking about, it's wasted. So a little bit about what was happening at Cobalt when I first joined. Incredibly, great sets of engineers and product people were really we're really communicating a lot with the rest of the business. We had regular weekly, sprint demos, particularly quite often presented by the engineers themselves. And what what they were talking about was brilliant. Some really great things. The problem was that what they were communicating, the actual words that they were using, were not resonating with the rest of the business. And in part because, this as a function had not moved on from when the company was 50 people. 50 people, including all the way from CEO down to kind of support person or product manager or whoever, you can get away with kind of, so it's a big extended family. When you're at 250 people, it doesn't scale well to hear the engineers talking about they removed 4,000 lines of code and it saved 2 seconds in a process on a particular page. All the engineers got super excited about this and patted themselves on the back. How does this help salespeople go and sell the products? It doesn't help marketing, in publishing the latest, report on product on pen testing and things like that, which is what we are involved in. So one thing that I spent quite a lot of time doing is kind of explaining this to the teams and really gearing them up to say, look, you need to think about your audience. Who is it that you are talking to? And what do they need from you? That's not the same thing as what you want to tell them. It's what is it do they need to hear to do their job? We are all here doing full-time jobs. We are all very busy. We are all pushing forward. How do we enable them to do their jobs and take away what they need? So what we did was basically implemented a very simple framework, a 3-step process to say anything that you're going to go and talk about on the presentation, in our Slack channel for product updates, in a new product updates page on our new product hub that we've also built here at Cobalt. It follows 3 steps. It says, what was the problem? Why are we even doing this? What was the problem that we're trying to solve? What have we built? And why is this awesome? It's a 3-step process that means that anybody can understand instantly what it is we have done. You don't have to have requested this problem, this solution. You don't have to have been here years to understand in depth what the product does. You could have turned up yesterday, and likely you will get, okay, we had a problem. This is what we've actually done to build it in good, simple terms. I don't care about the engineers and what they have done and how long they took and the testing process behind it. Tell us what it is you've done. And most importantly of all, why is this awesome? Why should people care about this? And why that's important is salespeople, marketers, support people, with absolute all respect to them, they're not technical people. They don't know, and they probably don't care about what we've done. What they do care about is doing their job, which is to sell the product. And so quite often, they might not even really understand the product inside and out to what they're trying to do and what they're trying to sell. But what they do need is phraseology. They do need snippets of information that they can lift and shift and go and put on a website, on a document when they're going to do their next sales pitch. They need to know, oh, look, this is really great. You can get to this page and you can get to this page. It's so time saving because you've now got a button here to do this. And this is the sort of consideration that we have for our user experience, blah, 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 blah. That is the information that they need. And it's just so incredibly overlooked to say you need to talk to your audience, not at your audience. Of course, that's the same across everything that we do. But I think in the technical terms, we really do like to really go to town and show off what we have done. Years ago, I used to be exactly the same, absolutely, particularly on data. You know, another big part of product operations, talking about data and analytics. I used to be really, really ingrained into producing loads of dashboards for every contingency, because I thought, firstly, people would be interested, and secondly, if I built them, people would be slicing and dicing. They'd go and find the information that they needed. Doesn't happen. It really doesn't happen. So now we have to be really careful about making sure that the information that we're providing, same like our communication, is appropriate to the audience. What is it they need to do their job? Do they need to know that? So the way that an example, the way that our platform works, we have a community of pen testers, and we put them together with people that want their software to have a pen test done to it. And so behind the scenes, we have an engine that basically matches all of these people together. We're based on various different characteristics. Does anybody actually care that apart from one team that engine matched 80% correctly last month versus 60% the month before? Apart from one team that actually is doing that, the rest of the business couldn't care less, because it's not in their purview, doesn't help them sell the product, support the product, do anything else with the product, tell them what they need to know. And so actually we're now tailoring a lot of our information, our pages, the work that we do to be audience specific, because they have such small amount of time to consume this information, to go and find this information out, because they're doing full-time jobs. They're doing everything else that is their focus.
Yes.
And that's the essence of Product Hub as a whole, is how do I get information to you quickly, easily, and just the information that you need, not bombard you with what is typically a Confluence or a Notion that's pages and pages and pages of the whole archive of where the company has gone through and things like that. They just need to know what they need to get through the day, through the week, and through the month. And that's it. And that is what it does. It just centralizes and focuses on that information. If you're an advanced user, you can go and dive into all of the history and get what you need. And if you're an advanced user, you probably know how to navigate what is already there anyway. So it's not a massive problem.
Yes. Yes, I love that as like a tagline for product ops as a whole is like, how do we do X so that it can effectively be used by the company? Where X is customer feedback, it's internal communication about what's shipping, it's roadmap planning, it's all of these things. Yeah, that's a great. I love that. Glad we
I
came to
think
that. I'm gonna
it's also a
give it up.
combination kind of the that touch point. So whereas traditionally product managers, in a contextually, you've been kind of this hub on a wheel, controlling information coming in, then to engineers and engineers to back and out to the business, and being that central point of any SaaS business. Actually, now what we can do is we can move those product managers out, and what we can put in the middle is a function, is a tool, is product hub, it's providing a place for information to be deposited and spread out, as well as information coming in from the rest of the business, filtered, combined, and then actually going to those right people. It might not always be product managers. It might be operationalists. It might be analysts. It might be data people. It might be designers. And what we're now doing is we're now not putting product management right at that center. They actually move back. They focus on what they need to, and they become a consumer of this information back and forth, just like everybody else in the business.
I love that. Okay, man, there's a million more things I want to talk about. I want to get into some questions. Phil had one around measuring the effectiveness of product ops and showing value, and then kind of a separate question around when do you feel like a company needs to start seriously thinking about spinning up the product ops function? How do you think about those?
Two great questions, Phil. Absolutely. And actually, the first question is, do you know what, is a question that the entire product ops community is wrestling with right now. There is no easy answer to this, because what we do is very people focused. There are, of course, things that we can measure. So if we put a process in place, how often is it used? How much has it reduced the old way that it was doing it? How many times has a page been viewed? So if we implement our product hub, how many times has that page been viewed? Things like that. How have we reduced down noise in our Slack channels? Things like that. There are specific success measures that we can put in place, and arguably that's what we do for product anyway. We put specific product success metrics in place that are specific to that. Yeah, of course, absolutely we do. But a lot of it really does to come down to the trust, the confidence that the business has in you. And an important thing that we have to remember with product operations, which again is really a point of contention for professionals in this space, is we're here to support the business interact with product. We're not here to support product managers. We're here to support the product function. And the product function, if you're in a SaaS business or anything that has software, spans the entire business. So we will be here to support the engineering team. We will be here to support the sales team and get what they need to have a bespoke process in place, maybe that they need to interact with parts of the technical side of the business, perfectly within our remit to do. We won't turn around to them and just say, oh, well, sorry, that's a sales ops problem to deal with. No, anything to do with the product and the product function is our business. And so with that, we do want to measure kind of people's confidence and happiness. NPS scores, employee NPS scores, is certainly a way of doing it. But certainly looking at what you're replacing. So if you're looking at processes, you're putting new metrics in place, new processes in place. You look at what is already in place. And if you're really, if you think about this, and actually I will admit this, I've not done this either of my businesses yet. I've been far too quick to kind of want to get in and make the low-hanging fruit changes that are important, is to take a measurement before, take the pulse of what things are like now before you really kind of get to town on it, because that's your baseline. And that's certainly from my experience absolutely something to do if you're going to stand this up or make significant improvements.
Is that as easy as is that as easy as just like a survey saying, out to everyone saying, on a scale 1 to 10, how well do we as a company handle customer feedback, handle, X, Y,
It,
Z,
it,
or?
Absolutely, it is a survey.
Mhm.
I'm trying to think who my peer is. I can't know if it's Jenny Wagner or not. But so I was listening to somebody just recently, another product operations manager, who was talking about exactly this. Take surveys. It can be as simple as what's your feeling of product operations, scale of 1 to 10, those sorts of things. I would look to be a bit specific. So absolutely take the pulse of how people are feeling about product as a whole, but actually then be quite specific and saying, look, how do you're going to work on communications, you're going to work on analytics. Take the pulse of that specific piece. Dive into questions. You can use this as a feedback piece as well. So not only can you take the pulse of how people are feeling, and get the feedback on what's missing. Use this as a great opportunity to gather that feedback about what things that people would like to see, what's missing, what's
Mhm.
not working well. You can get 2 for 1 with that. But it is really as simple as, asking people, taking surveys, things like that. There's no magic tech or magic formula to any of this at all.
Yes. Yeah, I love that.
And to answer, I
Bill's
think,
got a.
oh,
Oh,
sorry, I
sorry,
was
go
just
ahead.
going to ask you a question about kind of at what point to stand up product operations. And again, this is a
Yes.
really great question. There's huge, there's lots and lots of thought behind this. For me, if you're a startup, you don't need product operations. Most true startups don't even have product managers at that point. Your first product hire is not product operations. Absolutely, it's not even your second, or it's not even your third. Where it's of most benefit is going to be where you are now starting to need repeatability and formality in what you're doing. So startups can be scrappy, they can just get the job done perfectly fine, no
Mhm.
problem with that at all. It's at the point whereby, look, you're seeing patterns of inefficiencies, you're seeing patterns of things not being done right, missing information, things like that. Basically, wherever you need somebody to come in and check and balance, a
Mhm.
supervisor, somebody like that, that's not involved in the day to day, but that's going to sit behind the scenes, sit in the rafters, and kind of just point at things that are not working right, that need improvement, things like that. And of course, not pointing and saying you're doing that wrong, not at all, but understanding what those things are and then working to make those improvements. Every business is going to be different. Of absolutely, they will be. It's going to depend upon when the business starts to see and starts to notice those problems starting to arise. Is absolutely the time to come in. Too early, it's wasted. Too late,
Mhm.
there's a huge amount to then start to unpick and make improvements on. And it's not to say that that's still not important to time to come in, but it just makes that job harder. And in between that time, all the inefficiencies that are there. Plus, as well, as you scale teams, so if you're about to go through a big scale process, you're going to hire, like so many, hyper growth businesses do, they hire whole rafts of teams, product managers, product squads. That's absolutely the time to be thinking about this as well, because
Mhm.
a common thing with the squad mentality is that everybody does things differently. If it's not controlled, and again, that's fine in startup scale up world, but when you're about to hit that real hyper growth type time, if you don't get control of that just escalates, that propagates across everything that you do. And then the more people you have to unpick, the more personalities you have to unpick, it then just escalates that problem, tenfold.
Yes. Yes. It makes me think of, I think product ops is a lot of like solving communication problems within organizations. And there's that, you know, graphic that's like the communication overhead grows like exponentially as you like increase number of nodes. And like at some point, yeah, you just need someone to add that extra context or kind of, whatever about what the whole team's doing. Okay, Bill's got a question. I'm going to bring Bill up on stage and let Bill ask that.
Thanks so much. Yeah, what you just mentioned, Graham, especially about standing up products out at the right time, really resonates with me. That's what I was brought into product ops for. It was pretty amazing realizing, oh my gosh, I've been doing product ops for the past 10 years. I didn't even know it. I've always been a project manager, very often a Scrum Master. And usually the first thing I try to do is say, I don't want to be a Scrum Master, I'll be a Scrum Coach. So that's kind of my question. There is that element of the Scrum Coach side of product ops. I'm just curious about what you've done as a part of standing up product ops around the Scrum Coach and supporting the engineering team and helping them understand how to work well, but without trying to solve engineering problems, because engineers should be solving engineering problems.
Yeah, and look, there is kind of some guidance you can have, but you know what? Look, above everything else, it's the product operations role is a problem solving role. It's an enabling role, so that we never should be taking on problems permanently. We might take them on temporarily to help fix them and support people in the jam and things like that, but we're much more an enabling role to enable others to do their best work as possible and reduce those barriers, reduce those bottlenecks and things like that. And that's the same not just in product, it's the same in engineering. What can we do to reduce the bottlenecks that don't touch into what DevOps type roles start to do? DevOps has been around for a lot longer, very well established. Scrum Mastery, Scrum Coaching, absolutely. Agile Coaching, absolutely. They all absolutely have their place very much on the engineering side to help support that engineering practice. Product ops is, and sometimes can actually legitimately be termed technical operations, is much more about how do we analyze what the problems are, rather than being somebody that smooths an existing complicated and complex process for engineers. What we're looking at in product ops is what are the problems that already exist, what are the problems that have manifested over a period of time, and how do we solve them? That might not just be product, there might be in engineering as well, quite often around communication with the product teams, communication with the wider business. Some businesses will adopt a process where, like Cobalt, everybody has an equal voice, and as right they should be. Engineers should be able to go and show off their work. Fantastic. At the same time, you will have companies that do you know what? Engineers shouldn't be let anywhere near the rest of the business because they can't communicate well and things like that. And look, you know what? That's perfectly fine and up to them. But there are still needs for product, that operational type role to help unblock, help smooth over, help put processes in place that allow that interaction, that communication, that collaboration to happen. It doesn't override and tread on toes of those agile coaches and scrum masters. They work hand in hand because they've got a different focus. Those people, those scrum masters, are really focused on the detail, the product itself, whereas what we're focused on is the product function, more the people, more how product and tech works, rather than focusing down on the thing that we're producing. Does that make sense?
It totally does. That actually helps me. I'm looking for language to use in the conversations I'm having, because there's a lot of we need you to solve these problems in the Scrum team's velocity, in the productivity of engineering, in et cetera, et cetera. And hey, by the way, we've got all these other problems, which are very much product ops problems to solve. So I'm looking for words and language and ideas to say no, why don't the right people solve those problems? And I'm ready to help. How does that intersect with product ops? That kind of thing. So thanks. That's perfect.
You're welcome.
Yes. Yeah, that's great. I can see a lot of companies having a lot of companies thinking that the two overlapped because, a lot of times people think of Eng as driving a lot of product stuff. So I can see the conflation of the two kind of sets of problems happening a lot.
And by the way, that scaling inflection point is where that really becomes critical too. That's right where we're at. We're 30 people to 200 people within the next 6 months is the plan, if everything gets signed properly. And yeah, trying to get everything set up before that happens. I don't have time to do everything. I can only do the product ops part. So
yeah. Okay, I'm going to bring on Josh for one last question, and I think we're going to call it after that. Josh, if you want to try and pull you up here, if you're open to it, and you can ask that. And
I think Josh has said he can't do audio or video today.
All good. No worries. I think it's likely this question that you had dropped here in chat, so I can ask it for you. Do you utilize the jobs to be done theory and or business model canvas in your product development and strategy processes? And if so, how do you effectively integrate these frameworks to create value for your customers and drive the success of your product?
Well, do we utilize either of those frameworks? No, to be honest.
Mm.
Hands on the table. I very rarely use any particular frameworks in that sense to for product operations. In terms of what we do in the product teams themselves, we are deriving value through in part RICE, very simple metrics. I don't tend to look at a particular framework and say that's the framework I'm going to go and use, and I'm going to go and follow religiously. I look for what is going to enable our teams, and most of the teams that I work with, are smaller teams. They are kind of 20, 30, 40 people. I'm not used to working kind of at the 200 kind of scale of product teams and things like that, where much more rigid, much more proven frameworks are used. I look to just understand and derive value, and I derive value from what is it the company is specifically selling. How do we then? Sorry, and then there was a part of that question. I'm just going to scroll back up a little bit.
Yeah, here, I can put it back up on here as well.
So how do we effectively integrate a framework into what we do? How do we create value for our customers? So, we analyze what those requirements are. With doing product management 101 stuff. How is it? What are those customers looking for? How does it add value to what we are going to do? And again, up against the resources that we have, at these sorts of size and scale of teams, we have limited resources available to us. We have to pick what's going to take the company forward the most efficiently, as quick as possible, to realize that next step in revenue that we're going to get into, for the purpose of our investors, and the business security as a whole, and couple that with what we're doing in the marketplace as well. Quite fortunate that Cobalt is market leader in what we do in terms of pen testing as a service. We are number one in the world for what we do, so we're actually able to drive that marketplace. We're actually able to dictate what that marketplace is looking like and what it's going to do next, and we're working on some really exciting things at the moment to do that. All of this comes back through, proper analysis, a lot of market research that our product marketing team, are working on, consistently working on as well, to help us understand, the potential value of what it is we're doing. I know that probably wasn't the best answer or an answer that you were looking for there, but certainly the best I can give you today.
All good. If nothing else, I'd say I feel like the jobs to be done framework, it's like a good mental model and a good like focusing heuristic to really help you just kind of stay on track with what's the job we're trying to solve here. Like a lot of times, especially young startups, you have to nail a single job and a single problem, and catch fire there before you start to expand into other things. And so I think, especially as a startup, keeping that singular focus on hey, we're starting this company around this job, this problem. Let's stay focused on it until we're nailing it. And I think
and I'm obviously conscious of time, but I think the piece I'd leave you on with that as well is, we, particularly in the startup and scale up world, as new businesses, quite often people have been there and done that. They've been a part of other businesses. They've been employees and things like that. They've seen, they will listen to, and watch unicorns grow and things like that, and what they have done, and be very wrapped up in this is the way to do things. Okay, and this was actually a real concern that I had, which was a reason I started a product operations community to really help bottom out and define what the role is. And we've actually got some assets that's going to be released in the next month on all of this, in being wrapped up on what it is we should be doing. And how does everybody else do it? So a classic example was the Spotify model. This way that Spotify set up its teams, was supposed to set up its teams, and everybody, absolutely loved it because it was Spotify. They were making billions. They were the household name. And it came out that Spotify didn't even do it themselves. It completely failed, and they do something else. But people were so ingrained in saying, "Oh, it's Spotify doing it. We've got to do what they do. We've got to align ourselves to this big name, this big brand that's doing something different, because then we can say we're doing this." And it's complete rubbish. It really is. And this is a similar concern with product operations as well. Is that we need to not be so wrapped up in following a way of doing something. We need to be focused on what works. And I think Josh has kind of said this as well, is we need to focus on what our teams are capable of doing and what works best for them. Nobody does Agile exactly the same. Nobody does Agile as the manifesto and all the millions of books that have been written about it exactly. Everybody takes what they like. Everybody takes what works for them and their business and their industry, and that's it. So everybody works differently. So there is absolutely nothing wrong with even finding your own, mixing and matching different scoring frameworks and working frameworks and parts of Agile. You've got to do what works for you. For whatever you do not just listen to the gurus on LinkedIn and places like that and say, if we're not doing that, then we're failing. You have to figure it out for yourselves. Learn what you can and experiment and find out what works best for you. And it's exactly the same in product operations. There is no one way of doing it. There never will be. But what we are doing, and this is part of the project that I'm working on, is defining what are those core strategic pillars of what it is. Communication and collaboration, enabling teams, problem solving, data analytics, enabling and supporting data analytics for teams, and a few other bits and pieces as well. Those are the kind of 4, 5, 6 key pillars of what it is we do. It's not to say that we do all of them, and you will not do all of them, but there are also importantly, and I'll leave you on this, there are importantly some things that the role is not. It is not a triage space. It is not a bug finding place. It is not a place to support. It's not a place to just do demos for staff, for customers. It is not a place to do sales. It's not a place to do marketing. You might support all of those functions, but it's not a job to do that. And we will see time and time again people in product operations saying it's not a dumping ground for all the processes that people don't want to do. It's not that. It is a very well-defined, becoming a well-defined role that adds real benefit.
Love that. Okay, cool. Way over time. So just want to say thanks to you for doing this. This is maybe my favorite AMA we've done. I got so much out of this. So thanks so much. As a reminder, so these AMAs are put on by the Launch Awesome community. If you want to apply to join, there's a link right there in chat. How can we help you? Where can we find you online? You'd mentioned kind of starting up some product ops community related stuff yourself. Where can we find that?
So, I'm part of the Launch Awesome Slack group. So anybody wants to chat with me about anything we've spoken today or anything at all, I'm available on there. The product update, what we call the Day Zero project, is a small community at the moment that we are going to be launching a new website with lots of resources for product operations people. And when that's launched, invite you to all take a look at it. I'll post it in the Launch Awesome Slack piece. It's going to be a piece that's for all product operations people all around the world. Absolutely, we invite you to comment, to critique, to criticize, to talk to us about, and to make our product operations community globally one voice that all says this is exactly what it is and what we should be doing. Outside of that, LinkedIn, I'm always on LinkedIn as well. So if you want to connect with me, find me on LinkedIn. Steve can make me available as well on LinkedIn. And I'm absolutely happy to talk to anybody about anything on product operations or product management at any point. Just reach out to me.
Awesome. Love it. All right. Well, thanks to everyone who's gutted it out here an hour and 10 minutes in. You guys are real ones. So thanks for coming already. And with that, we'll say see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.